Welcome to The Writer's Dream. This is a show where authors talk about how they write their books, how they publish their books, and how they market their books. This is part 2 of a panel discussion with Long Island children's writers and illustrators. You can find these shows on YouTube. Just search my name, Linda Maria Frank. Click on my picture and the videos will come up. We're also right here on ltveh.org. Just look for video on demand and search for The Writer's Dream. If you want to message us, ask us a question, be on the show, then go through the Facebook page, The Writer's Dream. As I said, this is part 2 of a panel discussion about Long Island children's writers and illustrators. And I am going to introduce the 4 panelists, and I urge you to go on to the LICWI website, which is licwi.com, and this is Long Island Children's Writers and Illustrators, and you will find these 4 authors and the many books that they have written, as well as some other authors. And in investigating it that way, you can also find your way to their websites, and trust me, these are really very interesting books for children and young readers. So our first panelist and moderator is Selene Castrovia, and she has written By the Sword. Then we have JoAnn Krapp, who has written Totally Trouble, the 3rd in a series of Fire Island Adventures. We have Sandy Lanton, Still a Family is her book, and we have Brian Heinz, whose book is Cheyenne Medicine Hat, because he changed it from last time. Okay, folks, pick up where you left off. This is a really interesting discussion.
Well, thanks again, Linda. We are having a great time. We were just about to talk about the Author Nights, which is the great, exciting part you get to do once you've been published. So we've been through for me, it definitely was going to LICWI, going through the whole process. It took me years to get published. You know, it wasn't fast, but it was definitely a great journey. You know, there's many quotes about enjoying the journey, enjoying the process.
And I remember Bette Midler once saying, if I was an overnight sensation, boy, it was a long, long evening.
It was a long night, yes. I think Shakespeare said, things won are done, joy's soul is in the doing. And I do agree, but nevertheless, being published is not a bad thing. It is a great thing. So let's talk about some of our experiences at Author Nights, and let's talk about, I think Brian was about to talk about how the wolves, what did you say about the wolves?
He had the wolves.
Well, I was at one of our events, an author illustrator night out in Greenport years ago, and I had already written The Wolves. It was published by Dial, and a 4th grade girl came up to me, leaned over on my table, looked me square in the eyes, and said, I just read your book, The Wolves. It's the best book I ever read. You have to write another one just like it, but about horses. Now, horses were a million light years from my mind, but that kid connected with me. I couldn't get her face out of my head, and this idea just kept rolling around. And that summer, I packed up, my wife Judy and I, we went out west for 10 days to the Cheyenne River Canyon, and I spent that time with 350 wild Mustangs at a huge sanctuary. Did all my research out there, met the Native Americans, and this book was born, award-winning book. Had I known that young lady's name, she would have appeared in the dedication.
Yeah.
But you just don't know where these ideas come from. But to see a kid that enthused and excited about a book, this is really what we live for and why we run these author nights.
And you know what? To meet an author is amazing, because they get this connection. And also, when I was a kid, I thought you had to come down
Mount Olympus?
Yeah.
Well, yes, I thought that authors came from Mount Olympus pretty much. Like, who am I to write a book, you know? And to meet, if I had had this opportunity to actually meet authors and see, they're just regular people. If they could do it, why can't I do it, right? That is a large part of it. And then just the excitement. It's like, you wrote this book, and they get the signed book. It's like, wow, you know, and they get such a great variety at these author nights. Like, and even though, like, you know, some kids obviously they can't get one from every author. It's a huge expense. Who could afford that, right? But I see kids walking around with autograph books, you know, take pictures with us,
Right.
and also we will communicate with them. They write to us, and we write them back. I mean, wow. Oh my! That would have been my nirvana when I was a kid. You
I've
know?
also had connection with parents. I had one mother come up to me. She was buying still a family, and she said that she and her husband were separating, but they hadn't told the kids yet. And she was going to use my book.
That's great. Yeah.
And I felt, well, this is why I was put on earth, you know, to help this family get through a very difficult
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So you make that connection. It's not just a book. It is speaking from one person to another
Right.
about a topic.
Absolutely. Well, like I said, my books are all about the American Revolution. You know, By the Sword is about the Battle of Long Island, and Benjamin Talmadge was from Long Island, and I never heard of him until I found out he ran the Culper spy ring for George Washington, and it was all because of a friend of mine, you know, told me about it. So I started a whole career. I mean, this is Lafayette, George Washington and Lafayette, father son. Who would think I would ever care about Lafayette, you know? But it was all based on, like, why is this guy Lafayette always running around, you know? So my whole career is built on that. And in author nights, I get to explain to the kids how I came up with the passion. And all of a sudden, they're passionate. Passion is contagious. This is the great thing about meeting these kids, you know?
I made a connection with places. What happened, which I said in part one, I worked with Fire Island, the Fire Island Lighthouse, and when I was going to the author nights, the kids were very pleased that things were taking place on Long Island. Oh, I've been to the Fire Island Lighthouse. Oh, I've been there, I've been there. So every year I used to go out to Ocean Beach just for the day. I'd take the ferry out. And after writing that one, and I went to Ocean Beach, I thought, this is another place that kids know a lot about. And it just so happened at the time, I read this article, which everybody else I know knew about, and it was about during World War II when the Germans sent the submarines to Amagansett, and they landed on the shores of Amagansett, and they were there to sabotage American. And I took that and I worked it into Ocean Beach by hook or crook, and that became Trouble Times 3. And the kids, they know Long Island, and they like that you write your books in a place that they're familiar with. And then the third one, The Totally Trouble, is out at Smith Point Park, has to do with the TWA flight disaster.
I remember seeing that on the news.
And you know, and when I went to the last Author Illustrated night, I had a poster up that said "Coming Soon," and one of the mothers said, "Oh wow, I live right near there. As soon as that's done," she gave me her name and address. You have to send it to me. So I've made connections with places, which in turn have made connections with the kids.
Yeah, well, kids definitely are interested in things that happen right where they live, you know. And I think that a lot of people say, oh, it's so boring here, nothing's ever happening. I don't think that's true of anywhere. I think something happened pretty much everywhere. It's just how you explain it, you know, it's how you look at it. But I don't know why, but a lot of times in schools, they don't really teach you that part of history. Or, you know, I never learned about the spies. I never knew we were involved in the American Revolution at all. How is that possible that nobody explained this to me? You know, so there you go.
History is not just about the events, it's about the people.
Yes.
And it needs to be humanized, and I think that's what your books do. And I agree with JoAnn. I mean, a lot of kids gravitate to books to areas that they're familiar with, like Long Island. I mean, your books are Long Island as well. Some of my books take kids to faraway places where I can evoke the images. I mean, being on a dog sled at 20 below zero, or being up in the Canadian Rockies studying wolves. That's the other reason kids read, to get to go to a place vicariously that they haven't yet visited. And I think that's also a big draw.
It is.
So books always fill a void, one way or another.
They do, and you can see right away, like when you see a kid starting to read one of these books, we don't even have to really say anything. They start reading it, and they just light up. And then to have the added factor of being with the author, I mean, it's just, I just think, I can't imagine why a parent would not take a child to this if the opportunity is there. Well, I remember taking my kids, and they were like, the only problem was it got expensive. But it's really expensive.
Well, you don't have to
because
buy
my
every
kids were
book
there
from
all the-
every author.
my kids wanted because they were really bonding. But and I, of course, I did buy them whatever they wanted because I felt it was important. This is an investment in our children. And
But you mentioned before, thinking that authors came down from Mount Olympus. I know at the Author Nights, a lot of us are contacted by parents or by teachers. Many of us in the group do author visits, run writers' workshops, and that's a big part of it too. But for kids to realize that authors aren't just from some faraway place.
Yes.
That, wait, you're what town? That's
Right.
5 minutes from here. And I
Right.
said, you know, Long Island is so close to the metropolitan New York publishing hub. I mean, it's a rich stomping ground for authors and illustrators. Kids need to see that. They need to make those connections. It's an absolutely wonderful thing.
Yeah.
And again, getting back to how the kids are in awe, I had done an assembly program at a school, and one of the fifth grade teachers asked me to come back to the classroom. So I knocked on the door, and I opened the class. I heard all this chatter going on. The kids were all excited. I opened the door and walked in, and was dead silent. Every kid sitting up perfectly straight, staring at me. And I looked at the teacher. I said, "What's wrong?" He said, "It's author awe." The kid, it was like, oh my gosh, he's in our classroom. You know, he's not just in the assembly hall. It's nice that you can inspire kids
well,
that
kids
way.
do get very shy. Like I had a boy. I start telling the story about Benjamin Talmadge in the rear guard at Battle of Long Island. We lost the battle, waiting to die. Washington saves all the men. You know, and I tell this story, and I remember this one kid just like. I couldn't get a read on him. I'm like, is he enjoying this story? You know, should I wrap it up? You know, like, I can give the extended version. So he's just like, I'm like, okay. And I'm telling him, da-da-da. And he walks away. I don't even think he said anything. He just walked away. I'm like, okay, I don't know. And then at the end of the night, he dragged his mother up and said, I want this book. And his mother said, I've never seen him excited like this before. So it is that connection.
Yep.
You don't, this, and if he saw, I'm not just saying my book is so wonderful. I'm saying, any book, if he saw it in a bookstore, he'd probably be like, he needed someone to sort of pep
like
him
with
up a little bit.
superheroes.
Yeah.
Another good thing that the Author Illustrator Nights do is very often they will ask if, during the course of the tables where we're sitting around, they will ask if we will go into classrooms for a short period of time and give a workshop on certain things. So, depending upon what you want to give your workshop on, if you do poetry, you could do it on that. I did mine on how to use facts to write a fiction book, and Sandy might do one on using family experiences, but we go into the classrooms, and the kids come in for, maybe 10, 15 minutes, and we talk to them a little bit about it, which is good.
Our author nights are set up in different ways according to how the school wants to do it. I think to find out about them, they can go on the Liqui website and they can find out about having them. But we certainly give guidelines, suggestions. The only thing we really ask is that it's just about us and not some other
And don't
activities
have
tied in.
Scholastic
Well,
down the hall.
it's not only Scholastic, but in general, there could be a lot going on, like Irish step. I remember once I was trying to do a presentation,
step dancing.
and there was Irish step dancing right next to me. I'm like, is this like a joke?
Yeah.
But in general,
They try to cram as many events, cultural events, into one night, and it's too much.
Sometimes
because
the kids
all
get
each one
overloaded.
takes away from something else.
Yeah, everything's drawn and quartered.
Yeah.
If a school hosts an author night, we are the event.
yes.
Right.
It's a living author fair.
And we're
as
not getting
Linda mentioned
paid to do
earlier.
this.
we
you
don't
know,
get paid
this is
for
all
we
free.
all do this. We all do this because we want to connect with the students. Believe me, we're not making so much money that is worth our time just for the monetary aspect. We are doing this because we love our readers. Right?
Even the books are sold at a discount.
yes.
Yes. And
you're
some
right.
of our authors come from far. I mean, they have to drive a long distance
Very far. Yeah.
during commuter time, and then
But
come
I think
back.
we get something out of it too.
We do.
because
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
What do you get out of it?
Well, you're working in isolation. You don't know if you are reaching the people that you really want to reach. And when you come out to one of these things and a kid tells you that the book helped him or took him to a foreign country or helped him with an adventure, anything, you know whether or not you are achieving what you set out to achieve.
Yeah, and well, just getting them away from a video game for a few moments,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Or, you know, I mean, there's so many distractions for kids. And isn't it true that literature really sharpens our minds? It really, even if, you know, no interest in writing or anything else, just the idea of reading is for your mind. And to know that we help somebody, like, use something for their mind instead of vegging out on some, you know, video game or whatever they're doing these days.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that is quite a compliment for us, quite a gift.
And
That's the gift.
every once in a while, one of the kids at the Author Illustrator nights, every once in a while, will have written something.
Yes.
And they bring it to you, and they're so proud of themselves, you know, so they hand it to you, and you read it, you know, it's usually a little 2-3 page thing. And it's a wonderful way to encourage them to keep on reading,
Absolutely.
you know.
I get a lot of them writing to me, and they send me things they write.
Oh, really?
I ask them. I say, you know, well, they'll say something. I wrote something. They don't have it with them, and I'll say, oh, I'd love you to send it to me, and they do.
Yeah.
And that's the really cool.
Yeah.
That thank goodness for
Yeah.
email, right? You couldn't
Yeah.
get this. I mean, they would mail. It would be so much harder to get it with all the mailing and things. But email, a kid will go home right away, and they'll be able to do it on the spot. Whereas if they had to wait for regular mail, they'd
Yeah.
probably fizz out more.
Yeah.
But,
No,
you know.
email is wonderful. My husband
Yeah.
and I both taught in the same school in Plainview. And when we had an author night in that particular school, I emailed the librarian ahead of time and told her about my connection. There was a kid in that class who became my pen pal.
Oh wow.
She wrote to me and she told me about things she was writing, and she asked me for ideas. And we did back and forth for about 2 years before she left the school.
How
you
nice
know?
is that? Yeah. That's
Yeah,
that's an amazing
the
connection.
return, you mentioned the mailings and the student letters. Very often, we've all shared now, where we get an entire class letter put together by the class, they all
yes.
sign it, and that's the nice thing, we respond.
Oh, yeah.
I'll open up letters from kids faster than I'll open up a royalty check, because
Yes.
that doesn't excite me.
Oh,
But
it's the best, isn't it?
reading
Yeah.
the responses from the kids and how they enjoyed the assemblies, and I'll write a full letter back, I'll put in one of my book jackets, I'll sign it, just to make sure they're getting that gratification. It's, oh my gosh, I've gone into schools and they have a whole bulletin board set up
Yes.
with my jackets, and the kids are just absolutely thrilled. And that's important.
Yes. for
Receive a
all,
letter
yeah.
and ignore it,
Oh, terrible. Yeah.
I once
No.
got a whole manila envelope filled with individual letters and drawings.
Yeah, I love
I
that.
still have it,
I
you know.
say that my whole office is filled. I put them all over the walls. I frame some of them, and so I tape things all over. My whole office is just, it's all these. It's just these responses. Between that and I do get sometimes things from about my young adult novel also. Actually, pretty often I hear from them too. So between the two things, it's plastered all over the office. But the
Sometimes-
first time I got a poster with they each kid had drawn a little picture on it. I was like, this is the most.
I still have
wow.
something hanging up
still
that
have
I
it,
don't know
yeah.
whether the kids
Yeah.
did it or the art
Yeah.
teacher did it, but it's hanging
Yeah.
up in my office. But it brings it to life. It brings it to.
It's for them and
a
for us.
connection.
It's reciprocal. That I think
Yeah.
at the heart of it, I think the author nights are reciprocal.
Yeah.
We're all getting something from it, and
you-
parents too. I think parents really
And you
appreciate
have to
us, too.
thank some of the teachers who
Oh,
go
yeah.
to the trouble before we come. And they'll
Some of
take
them
your
adopt
book
a
ahead of
class.
time.
Some of
they
them will
the
adopt
book.
an
Yes.
author and they'll
Yeah,
make
and then the
posters.
kids make a big poster and so
Right.
on.
Oh,
so
yeah,
they
it's very
feel
important.
vested into you and your book.
Yes. It's
which
very
is
true.
nice.
Kids, teachers are amazing. They're real champions. They really
Well,
are.
some of the books are actually picked up as mentor books and used as basically a training book in the classroom for literature, how to use language. And that's always a very positive
That
thing
is
that happens.
amazing. Well, your language is
yeah.
extraordinary. Yes.
But I mean, I've received letters from teachers in Saskatchewan, Canada, because the books are sold nationwide. You don't know who's picking up your book.
Right.
But when Cheyenne Medicine Hat came out, they were having a problem with the wild horses up on the plains in Saskatchewan, and the Canadian military was ordered to cull the herd, and they went out there shooting these horses.
Heartbreaking.
It is
no.
heartbreaking, but she read Cheyenne Medicine Hat, and it became a whole lesson in her classroom, a whole unit. And I received this beautiful letter from her. I said, holy smoke, somebody in Saskatchewan, Canada has bought this book and has found a use for it in their
Oh, it's
classroom.
beautiful, yeah.
It's
You never know. That is very true. That's very true. But I think it's important to have our books go far, but close to home. A lot of times you don't really consider how important the home base is. But we, through our author nights, do have that. We do have the connection with our home base, and I feel so fortunate that we have these. You know, this is not common all over. We don't. For some reason, thanks to you, really, you started this out
Brian.
with having the whole group together to do these things. I mean, what an amazing thing to have authors from one area all gather together and present. It's a powerful. And I don't hear about it in a lot of places. When I tell
You can't
people
work
about
in a
it,
vacuum. You
No.
just can't.
And it's also good for the kids who come to the author nights because they see people who are authors now who come from their area. And, you know,
yeah,
she's
and like
a
I said,
local author.
they
She
know,
writes.
yeah.
I can write
Absolutely.
from here.
Well, I
you know.
started when I was in 5th grade, and I tell this story to kids that I entered an essay contest and I won from my school. And I went to New York City to the Theodore Roosevelt Brownstone, and I met kids from other schools, and then went on back and wrote up an article